Welcome back. On today's video, we're going to talk about the average cost of a wedding and how it applies to people long term, or how it impacts your finances long term. Now, this will probably be a little bit controversial. People will say, well, I want to have that wedding day of my dreams, and that's fine. Just make sure that you understand what it means to you long term.
Jumping right in, on Fidelity's website, they mention the national average wedding cost in 2024 is $33,000. Don't be surprised if you recently got married and said you spent nowhere near that amount. This is the average. If you listen to our videos long enough on this channel, you'll understand there's a difference between average and median. And the problem with average is you're going to have people on the high end and on the low end skewing the numbers. What we want to find is the median. So if we take this one step further and go over to USA Today on their money site, they talked about the average cost of a wedding in 2024 also, but they did a survey. And what they found in the survey of 2,000 Americans who got married between 2021 and 2024 was, on average, 52% of those Americans spent less than $10,000 on their wedding. Nearly half of them invited 50 people or less. And on average, 69% of Americans spent $5,000 or less on their engagement ring. So people are not necessarily spending $33,000 on average. What we're finding is there's a few people that spend $1 million on their wedding, and most people spend less than $10,000 on their wedding. In fact, here's a breakdown. 52% spent less than $10,000. Another 17% spent between $10,000 and $20,000. 9% spent between $20,000 and $30,000, and just adding those up, we're at the high 80% already. So that'd be 70, 80, yeah, roughly 80%. Now, some said they couldn't remember or weren't sure, and either those people are extremely wealthy or they had parents or other people paying for it. Only 2% spent more than $100,000. So that's an important thing. Now, here's the breakout on what drives the cost of the weddings: the venue, live band, wedding photographer, florist, alcohol, rehearsal dinner, videographer, and the wedding and event planner, and the wedding dress equate to the bulk of those costs. There's nothing wrong with spending money on your wedding day, or spending money that you have that you can afford to spend on that wedding day. What is important is what this means to your finances long term. So let's take a couple of different numbers. And you know that I like to put things, if you watch this channel, into investment calculators. So I just took that $33,000 and plugged it into nerdwallet.com's investment calculator. Why? Because that money means something. It has a long-term value to you if you were to invest it, put it into an investment fund, and then use it at a later date. So let's say it was $33,000 invested for 20 years at a 10% rate of return. That compounds monthly if you put it in some good mutual funds and they're reinvesting the dividends that they spin off, and you don't put another penny in it for another 20 years. In 20 years, that $33,000 will be $241,000. That's a pretty good nest egg. Let's say we break this down to the $10,000 that the average American actually spent. 20 years of growth, and this of course could be left in there a lot longer if we're looking for retirement, but let's say we're saving for something else. 20 years of growth, 10% interest, monthly compounding, and no money added to it ever again is $73,000. That is a down payment on a very nice home. That could be a great start on a retirement plan. If we take this out to 30 years, that's almost $200,000 from a $10,000 spend. So again, there is nothing wrong with spending money on a wedding or spending money on something nice, as long as that money is reserve, or is not your reserve, it's not all of your money, and it is kind of just discretionary. Otherwise, we should be looking at this as, what are we doing to save money for our futures, to plan financially for ourselves, and to set ourselves ahead. I hope this has been helpful to you, at least giving you some insight. I'm sure I'll catch some heat for making this type of video. If you do have some comments you'd like to leave, feel free to put them down below. And if you know someone who may benefit from this content, feel free to share the video. If you like this type of content, please do consider liking and subscribing. Thanks for being here. We'll see you on the next one.